Hey everyone, welcome back with Beano Mac, where today we're going to continue our playthrough of Legends of Wrestling for the GameCube on the Dolphin emulator here, and as you can see here, we're going to continue our journey through the Midwest with Hulk Hogan.
This is the main event of the evening. From Venice Beach, California, standing at 6 feet 8 inches and weighing in at 300 pounds, the man with the largest arms in the world, Hulk Hogan. And his opponent from Detroit, Michigan, standing at 6 feet 1 inch and weighing in at approximately 290 pounds, former world heavyweight champion and Wrestling Hall of Famer, George the Animal Steele.
And of course, we're starting off against George the Animal Steele here. There was so much of intrigue with this guy when I was growing up. You know, obviously, he is really someone that embodies the characters that the WWF 80s was known for, I think. And honestly, I think he did all that stuff before he came to the WWF. But I mean, what a wild, interesting, character he came up with. And, even just his backstory of, him in real life, in which he would be, he started out as like just a teacher and stuff like that. And I think he would only wrestle in the summers and stuff to make some extra money and whatnot. And it's just interesting because, that was still back in the days when, wrestling was still all about kayfabe. So when he would go back in the classroom, some kids who really were into the wrestling scene and stuff like that would, bring in a wrestling magazine, he said, and say, hey, I think this is you, George the Animal Steele. And, there was no real way to prove that it was him. And obviously, he was such a wild looking dude in the ring that, he was like, hey, you really think I look that ugly? And, it's just kind of really cool stuff to hear, him tell some good stories. And unfortunately, I believe George the Animal Steele is someone that we have lost in wrestling industry as well. It's just, it's nature of the business and whatnot. But seemed like a pretty cool dude from all things I've seen, in interviews, the brief things I've seen from him. And, he was definitely a character. I think, one of the biggest storylines he had was against Macho Man Randy Savage when, Savage was jealous, about the attention that Miss Liz, or I'm thinking the King of the Hill, Miss Elizabeth was giving him, George the Animal Steele, because of his endearing nature and stuff. But yeah, I gotta watch some more of that 80s wrestling stuff. There's so much wrestling stuff that I've gotta watch and experience and whatnot, like 80s wrestling storylines. I'm in the middle of my ECW playthrough, and I gotta watch some good ECW stuff too, but I'll be able to make it to that stuff someday. I also want to get Peacock or whatever the heck I'm gonna need to get. I think it's still Peacock for American audiences. There's some weird deal they got going on to where Netflix doesn't have all that stuff for WWE anymore, but it's only in like the US or whatever, I think. I don't know. I mean, I try not to look too much into that situation just because I'm not really, I don't even have the network. But obviously, it's licensing deals. It's just such a weird, crazy thing. So confusing sometimes with stuff. Like the Friday the 13th game, I think even died because it was mostly due to licensing issues with Jason and that whole franchise and who owned the rights and stuff. But speaking of which, I need to watch, I need to rewatch some classic Ruthless Aggression era stuff too. Just not sure how I'd want to watch that though, because, I'm not sure if I'd want to watch, Raw throughout the years and their pay-per-views and then come back and watch SmackDown, or if I'd want to, do both shows and watch all the pay-per-views and keep up with the storylines at the same time. But I don't know, that's the fun about wrestling, There's so much of it that you can watch. But even then, I still gotta watch. I'm like pretty much just like 3 months away from WrestleMania 17 and the Attitude Era watch that I was doing, so I gotta finish my Attitude Era watch. But like I said, in other videos I don't really have the time for it, so I don't even know why I'm ranting about it. But once I get my, Let's Play situations under control, I should have a lot more time for other things. Let's see here. Oh gosh. Yeah, don't try that shit on me, George. Okay, never mind. Oh, god damn it. Yeah, it just gets thinner and thinner. The reversal things is really what annoys me in this whole series. Is because, like, eventually, it starts out big, and, I feel like, I don't know, the way they do it is just really obnoxious and annoying. And, you'll just get in constant struggles over and over again. Over, people will reverse each other 10 times before a move actually gets landed. Oh, yeah, it's just so brutal. Look at the frickin'... I don't know, these screens always used to scare the absolute hell out of me when I was a kid. I mean, look at how brutal these matching these screens look.
And hailing from Pensacola, Florida, standing at 6 feet and tipping the scales at an amazing 230 pounds, Robert Gibson.
Now we gotta go against Robert Gibson here, folks, of Rock and Roll Express. I don't think they have the Midnight Express in these games, which is unfortunate, but Jim Cornette, I'm surprised, was somebody, too, that didn't ever get any sort of contract with Legends of Wrestling. I don't know if that's because he was running OVW at the time when these games came out, or maybe they just, didn't need the money, so it was like, yeah, I don't really need this, so... I'm not going to take some low ball off or anything like that. But yeah, you think this series would be tailor-made for him. I bet he would, even though he complains about video games and stuff like that, to his audience nowadays. And I guarantee you if there was a new game that came out that celebrated, like, classic Legends or something like this, he would be all over it. At least as far as, like, allowing his license in it. But I think an amazing game, honestly. I was speculating a few episodes ago, but this idea just came to me. Once again, I think it'd be cool if they focus on the territory era of things, from like the 70s and 80s. But have a mode that just focused on the classic rivalries and stuff like that. And I mean like a full-on thing. Like Showdown's Legends of Wrestling, I think tried to replicate a lot of, But Showdown's Legends of Wrestling, which I have not actually played yet, I believe like that story mode is about replicating, like, I think each guy has like maybe like 3 matches or something like that each that you have to like do, whereas like, just reenacting history or something like that. Like I think they have a DDP versus Sting match and all that sort of stuff, and that sounds kind of cool. But I feel like if they had, like, kind of like how WWE Showcase mode is, where, like, you're just doing some of, like, the biggest rivalries, right? Like, imagine doing, like, a showcase in, like, one of those games of, like, obviously they couldn't use the footage, but they would be able to, obviously, I feel like there wouldn't be Jesus, what the hell happened to that freaking cookie sheet? But obviously, I feel like they wouldn't have any issues with, recreating the rivalries and the matches to a degree in cutscenes, right? Because, I mean, technically you're not really using the footage, right? You're just recreating it. So imagine if they had like a Midnight Express versus Rock and Roll Express, rivalry recreation thing of just some of their biggest matches and events and kind of the storyline surrounding that. You could have some feuds with the Fabulous Freebirds and the freaking Von Erichs. That would be pretty awesome. Because, I mean, more so than anything, it would just be really cool to have like an actual kind of like history thing. So I don't think a lot of kids would play it really, but it'd just be really awesome if we could just have some sort of something that just kind of really shows people, once again, wrestling fans who might not be aware of those rivalries, honestly, such as myself, I'd love to see like play a game that's features that sort of stuff and helps people learn about a time in wrestling which really isn't really all highly documented as much as it is in like the WWF 80s, and obviously the 90s is pretty well covered on the network. There's also a lot of other things though, like they don't have Sunday Night Heat on there, the full series on there. Or Velocity, I don't think is either. A lot of weird stuff that they could add to the WWE Network that just isn't there. But I think once they kind of sold it, that's when they stopped really adding a lot of, classic footage in bulk. But I could be wrong. But I hope that's not the case, because there's still a lot of content and classic wrestling that we need the footage to be released on, so we all have like a way to document it and be able to watch it, and archival sake, I just love how like the slightest movements in this game can just make these guys just scream in agony. So goofy. Okay, what the heck just happened there, man? Uh-oh. Man, he's wasting my finisher bar. God damn, now he's reversing everything? What the hell is going on? Ah, of course. God damn it. I'm the one who's supposed to be hulking up here, not you, pal. And also, I mean, honestly, you can tell I've also changed my outfit here. I'm actually planning on, I figured out that in the edit mode, you can actually not just create your own wrestlers in this game, but you can actually edit the wrestlers' second outfits, I believe. So we'll play a few, matches here with this outfit, and I don't know, maybe I'll even do another episode to where, Hulk Hogan's second outfit. The second game had 4 outfits for everybody, and that's sweet. But this game only has 2, and that's fine. Gonna try and get my finisher here, but doesn't really work very well. Pretty much you only get one finisher per match, it seems like, and with the knockout mechanic, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get it. So I don't know how the hell like Ricky Morton hasn't been freaking ejected yet. But it is pretty cool. I think that they I feel like this is the first game I've played, because this is 2001, so I don't think they've had any wrestling game where the managers actually, play a part like this, where, they can disrupt the match and stuff like that. I think this may have been like ahead of the curve on this in this case, because I know later WWE games, what was it, like the SmackDown vs. Raw series, where they established that managers can get up on the apron and distract the ref. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's something that this game's ahead of the curve and ahead of its time on. And this, what does he even like put him on the why is he calling him to the apron anyway? Nothing's even happening. God damn it. Either way, I think if I make him tap or knock him out, it doesn't matter if the ref is distracted or not. Come on, we're kind of close. Ooh, alright. Maybe this could happen. I think the most fascinating thing about these, the time period of which this, these wrestlers came from is there were legit riots and, heels would get their asses kicked. Like, that's just such a fascinating topic for me personally. Like, just, the kayfabe and the believability and stuff like that. Now if a heel actually gets some heat and stuff like that, the fan, there's I wouldn't even say a good portion, just, it's one of those vocal minority things in which WWE kind of caves, because maybe they'll say something to get some real life heat, and, then it's like, WWE, they're terrible for allowing him to do this, so.
And weighing in at 245 pounds, the Golden Warrior and part of the Von Erich dynasty, Kevin Von Erich.
But I mean, that's sad and stuff on the whole, people getting offended over storylines and stuff. I mean, I feel like that's, especially back in the day, that was the whole point of wrestling, is the heel gets heat, he pisses people off. And nowadays I feel like fans, I get it to a degree, during the Attitude Era, guys like Triple H and Kurt Angle were entertaining and cool and stuff like that, but Roman Reigns is a great modern example of that as well. But I don't know, like it just always bothers me when like there's a storyline that could be perceived as slightly offensive or something like that, and like you could do something like that on TV or like a movie where the villain's a legit douchebag. And he just hit me with the fucking RKO. I don't think Kevin Von Erich was busting those out back in the day. But anyway, yeah, so like, you know, in a movie or a TV show or something like that, the villain could be a huge asshole, do terrible things and stuff like that, say legitimately terrible things, you know, be racist, a terrible asshole, the worst kind of person imaginable, you know, to get you invested in the storyline. But wrestling fans, it's like, what, the heel? Why is he not being cool? Why don't I like the heel? You know what I mean? It's just, and I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like, you know, when you don't have that kind of stuff, it kind of defeats the purpose of wrestling in a lot of ways. Like, it's entertainment, and I get that, and you know, you got to update to the times and realize that, you know, not everything's gonna be perceived as real and stuff like that. But like, it bothers me when like something that maybe a storyline fans don't like, it's like, you know, constant complaining. Oh man, AEW, man, you know, just, can't believe they even tried to get away with this. Or man, WWE, I mean, what were they thinking? You know, that's good old racist Vince or Triple H, or, you know, oh my god, you know, he's fat and who cares? Why is this a storyline about that or anything like that? And it's just, there's definitely a thing with the wrestling fans I agree with 100%, in which a lot of them don't like to see where the storyline goes. It's just one piece of the very small puzzle, and they'll get upset about it and say, yeah, the storyline's awful, when it's just like, you know, week 1 or week 2 or something, and we don't know where the direction's going to be heading. Not to say that there aren't terrible storylines all throughout, you know, wrestling history, but that's the thing about wrestling. I think there needs to be more experimentation in today's age to kind of bring more excitement to it. And I think, you know, wrestling is kind of at its best when it is controversial. But I don't know, like I said, there's just too many different opinions in today's entertainment media world and stuff like that. And I don't know, like I said, I think I mentioned the Mickie James storyline is the one that always sticks out to me in 2010, where, like, you know, people still talk about how terrible of a storyline it was. Because, you know, at that time, I believe the WWE was doing their anti-bullying campaign, Be a Star. And the storyline Mickie James was involved in was she was going against Layla and Michelle McCool. And they were just saying stupid stuff like, oh, you know, Piggy James, you're fat, Mickie James, this or that, bullying her, making her cry, stuff like that. Stuff you would think that the heels would do, right? Because they're assholes. That's what they do. And, you know, people wonder why there's no heel heat nowadays, really. And even when people do get invested in the storylines, like, it seems like there's always people, wrestling fans, a lot of times saying, hey, you know, this is just a storyline. Why, you know, it's not really Dom Mysterio who's, you know, pissed off at his dad. It's just a storyline. I guess nobody told this guy that, you know, wrestling was fake. Haha. It's like, it's one of our own, and they're trying to, you know, put people down for getting invested in these kind of things and stuff. And I don't know. What are you gonna do? Like I said, different opinions. Well, I'm gonna complain about it, I guess. Jeez. Look at how messed up he is. Reminds me of like the Street Fighter 2 Game Over screens.
Towering in at 6 feet 6 inches and tipping the scales at an amazing 280 pounds, the Yellow Rose of Texas, David Von Erich.
Alright, well, if you were unaware, which I'm sure you probably are, because I don't think there's any way of knowing for you guys, but once you reach 100% popularity, actually, it's when you know it. But this match is for the Midwest Championship. So once we take out, you know, David here, we already humiliated his brother Kevin. So now we just gotta take out David here, and we'll become the Midwest Champion. And I don't know, these guys. I've always been very fascinated with the Von Erich family. It's such a nothing but tragedy, man. And like I said, I mean, the thing that's just so cool about their era is just thinking about how beloved these guys were during their era. You know, like it's the kind of love that I don't think anybody in professional wrestling can get nowadays. You know, because they believed in the wrestlers themselves so much. But I mean, even from the beginning, I mean, you know, they had, I think, I can't remember his name, but they have like a little brother who, I think he like drowned when he was like 6 or 7 or something like that. After he got like electrocuted and he like fell face first in a puddle or something. Man, that's just always sad to hear. And then obviously, you know, we got Kevin Von Erich, who I always get them mixed up. It's either Kevin or Kerry, who was the Texas Tornado, and I think Kevin is the one who is still alive to this day. But don't quote me on that, because I always get them mixed up. And then the one that isn't with us anymore, I remember he was like the Texas Tornado in WWF. And then David Von Erich, the one I'm facing now, I think he was the one that everybody, so they were all big stars, especially when they were together facing the Freebirds and stuff like that, you know, the original trio and stuff. But I think people always said that David Von Erich, he was like the real star, because he could actually, you know, really go in the ring and all that good stuff. And he was supposed to win the title against Ric Flair, the NWA World Championship, and I think it was just like less than a week before he was actually finally supposed to you know, win the title and stuff like that. You know, it was in Tokyo, Japan, in which you know, he overdosed on the drugs, and unfortunately, you know, never got to win that match. And then I believe it was I always forget which one. Like I said, it's either Kevin or Kerry who was the one who won the NWA Championship from Ric Flair. But I think even, you know, he was messed up, because there was just so much drugs in the family, even though they were, you know, portrayed as well, that was the weirdest ref bump I've ever seen. But anyway, even though they were portrayed as, like, you know, the ultimate Christian good values family and stuff like that, there was a lot of drugs involved. And I think, I don't know how true it is, but apparently, like, Fritz was like a massive asshole to his kids, and was one of those guys that like pushed his kids into the business when they didn't necessarily want to. And, you know, that unfortunately resulted in quite a few suicides too in the business, especially like some of the sons, which I think may have been Mike Von Erich. I think so. One of them had like brittle no, I think it was either Mike or Chris had the brittle bones disorder. There's just so many of them, folks. I'm sorry. I'm not doing a very good job of telling you the real history of it, but there's just so many of them to keep track of, and who had what and whatnot. But you know, one of them had brittle bone disease, so they couldn't wrestle, and I think they took their own life from that. And then, you know, obviously one of them took their own lives because of the death of their brothers, and the stress of that. There's drug overdoses. Every tragic thing you could ever think of pretty much happened in this family. And I think, how can I not hit him? But I think one of the saddest quotes I've ever heard was surviving member, which I think was Kevin Von Erich. I think it was in the Iron Claw movie or whatever. He said that, you know, he used to have like 6 brothers, and now he's the only one left. He only has he used to have 5 brothers, and now he has no brothers, and that's just such a heartbreaking thing to hear. But speaking of heartbreak, I did take the Midwest Championship from David Von Erich, so now we just have to defend it one last time, and we'll have to see who the poor victim is. It might be another Von Erich.
His opponent from Honolulu, standing at 5 feet 10 inches and weighing in at approximately 235 pounds, two-time world heavyweight champion, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Alright, so, not a Von Erich, but we do have Ricky the Dragon Steamboat here, folks. This is also a little bit of a tragic case, just as, you know, kind of like a what if. How far could he have gone, you know? I think there was just so much great talent back in the 80s and 90s. You know, there's Ricky Steamboat, Rick Rude, Jake the Snake, Mr. Perfect, British Bulldog, Owen Hart. You know, guys who could have very well been very, you know, popular world champions, but just didn't really get the chance due to either maybe management issues or just so much talent circulating at that time. But that said, I mean, I do like how a lot of those guys, Roddy Piper included, never won a world title in a major promotion, I don't think. Maybe he was the WCW champion, I can't remember. But, you know, I think it was just really cool. There were a lot of guys who were like, hey, we don't need the belt because we're just attractions in and of ourselves. You know, Roddy Piper was definitely one of those guys. Another guy was Ted DiBiase, when you think about it. Would have been cool if he was world champion, and he was pretty close to being world champion. Obviously, Macho Man won that in the end at WrestleMania 4, but, you know, I think, you know, the $1 Million title is honestly one of my... that's the only belt I ever had as a replica title. I have it up on a shelf right now. I'm actually looking up at it right now as I'm recording this. Such a beautiful belt. Very, very fragile, but it looks so beautiful. Like, that's the first thing I ever got when you know, I wanted to get a job. You know, I've been wanting that since like since I was 6 or something. Because I remember I first seen it when I was playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. Obviously, Ted DiBiase and that belt made it into the game as like Legends and Legends titles and stuff like that. And so just from that point on, I was like, okay, the first thing I ever buy when I get my first job, that's going to be the $1 Million Championship. And got a job at 17, Wendy's, and, you know, that's the first thing I got with my first paycheck. But I brought all those names up just kind of emphasize that titles don't mean everything. But I also do like the fact that all those guys not winning the belts kind of gave it that much more prestige, because it meant only the absolute greatest in the sport could actually win those belts. And a lot of people say, oh, or you're not really actually winning anything, so what's the big deal? It's like, I don't really like it when people look at it in that way, because the point of it is that we're all supposed to believe these guys are fighting for this championship prize. But just like any prop in any sort of movie, we got to be made to believe that this is something that matters in the context of the storylines. But it does look like this is going to be the end of the video, so thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe. Check out next week's episode on Wrestling Wednesday, but above all else, please remember to have a nice day.